40, when you wake up in the morning, do you feel tired and run down? Do you have that listless feeling?
La Ventana Indiscreta me parece una de las películas más perfectas de Hitchcock, donde se resumen todos sus temas, pero sobre todo ese virtuosismo técnico queda más patente. Hace poco lo leía en la autobiografía de William Friedkin que Hitchcock es el director ideal para aprender a hacer cine. Dice, no hace falta ninguna academia de cine, nada. Tú simplemente te repasas las películas de Hitchcock, ves lo que ha hecho y intentas preguntarte por qué lo ha hecho y ya sabes cómo se hacen las películas y es verdad. Es súper nítido, entonces yo recuerdo que me dedicaba a examinar el montaje y por qué lo encuadro aquí, por qué corta este plano aquí. Y eso te da las cuatro claves de cómo funciona, sobre todo de cómo funciona el suspense, por supuesto. Yo debo haber visto películas de Hitchcock desde niño en la tele y no había visto Psicosis. En cuanto ya en mi casa por fin se compró un vídeo, un magnetoscopio, me fui al videoclub y no encontré Psicosis 2, me acuerdo, se vi primero la segunda parte.
Yo nunca he estado aquí, no te conozco y jamás he visto esa cinta.
Pues yo no sé si en tesis ya tenía Hitchcock como referente, seguro que sí, pero en los cortos ya sí que me planteaba cosas, cuando editaba los cortos sí que me planteaba cosas que había visto en películas de Hitchcock, pues el tema de los contrapicados o pues eso, sobre todo cuestiones de montaje, del por qué cortar aquí al otro personaje. Y en tesis lo que pasa es que cuando te echas para atrás te das cuenta de que las influencias vienen. Yo creo que en tesis hay una gran influencia de Vestida para matar, y Vestida para matar a su vez está influida por nada menos que por Vértigo, o sea que está por Psicosis, realmente te das cuenta de que estamos todos viviendo de lo mismo. Repasando sus películas, a veces me da la sensación de que justo este mundo de trucos y de mecanismos se hacía más aparente o detectable en las últimas películas, y hay algunas de sus primeras películas que me parecen perfectas. La Soga, por ejemplo, me parece maravilloso como está todo planificado. Y en La Ventana Indiscreta me funciona todo muy bien. Creo que es una de esas películas que hoy le puedes poner a un chaval de, bueno, ya no sé, con los chavales de 15 años, pero bueno, alguien de 18, 20 años y todavía va a entrar en la historia. Que está muy bien contada, el punto de vista es, bueno, la elección del punto de vista es perfecta. Es una película sobre el voyerismo, que es lo que define a Hitchcock y nos define a todos los espectadores. Tiene el alarde técnico de haberlo planteado, pues eso, una historia contada a través de un señor en su apartamento, cómo espía a los demás, y todo como ejercicio de suspense, cómo cuenta todas esas historias en el vecindario, cómo utiliza la banda sonora, digamos, diegética a través de la música que suena en la propia historia. Me parece una de sus películas más perfectas.
No viste ni el asesinato ni el cadáver. ¿Por qué estás tan seguro?
Porque todo lo que hace ese tipo me parece sospechoso.
Sobre todo Hitchcock, yo creo que confiaba muchísimo en la técnica y en los mecanismos. Pues eso, a través del montaje, yo pongo la cámara aquí, consigo esto. Lo consigue muchísimas veces y lo más curioso es como ahora, décadas después, todavía te das cuenta de que te ha engañado. De pronto hay un plano que dices, ostras, me acaba de engañar. Pero también es verdad que muchos de sus trucos ya han salido a la luz y son muy fáciles de detectar. Y eso te impide muchas veces, que supongo que a gente joven también, cuando va a ver una película de Hitchcock, porque se está dando cuenta del truco. Yo no creo que él tuviera tan claro, como se ha dicho, que él lo hacía aposta, lo de pues que se notaran los forillos de Marnie la ladrona o que se notaran las retroproyecciones. Yo creo que él confiaba realmente en esa ingenuidad, esa capacidad del espectador para dejarse hipnotizar y creérselo. Y cuando pasan los años, evidentemente los espectadores son más resabiados y ya no se tragan muchos de los trucos.
You once said that you like to make an audience scream through technical means. What is it about an audience screaming that you like?
How many times have you heard a woman say, "Oh, I went to see the movie and had a good cry"?
That's true.
They do, you see. Now, what is a good cry? She never says, "I went there and had a bad cry." Otherwise, she wouldn't have paid the money to go in the first place. So these people have paid money to be scared, just as much as they go to Disneyland and go on the Big Dip or whatever they call that railway, you know.
The roller coaster?
Yes, roller coaster, or the haunted house. They pay to be scared.
Do you like to be scared yourself?
No, I'm not keen about it. I have been on odd occasions.
Like when?
Oh, I think I was driving with my wife to Dubrovnik in the middle of the night, and we were on a ledge, on a mountain ledge, 8,000 feet up, and we came head to head on with a bus. So it was a question who was going to go by first, and I remember having to get out and beckon her on, and the wheel was within 18 inches of the drop. I said, this may be good enough for the movies, but it's not good enough for me now.
I know that you plot out very carefully your scenario and work out very carefully your films. Does it ever happen then that the actors get in the way of this, that you have trouble with them?
Method actors do.
You do?
Well, method actors are like children. They're all right for the theatre, but they're a little problem with films, especially where cutting is involved. If you remember a film I made years ago called Rear Window, which was all from the point of view of one man, James Stewart, sitting in a window. Well, he had to look. Then I had to cut to what he saw, then cut back to his reaction. Now, what I was really doing was showing a mental process of the man by means of pictures, by what he saw. And supposing he said, well, I don't feel I would look that way. Well, how can the film be constructed on those lines? I had it with that actor who's now dead, called Montgomery Clift. He was a method actor.
And you had difficulty with him?
Well, yes, I was shooting a scene in Quebec, and he was playing the part of a priest who'd just been acquitted of a murder, but was being sort of booed and stoned outside the courthouse. And then the action of the film was to go across the street into the Chateau Frontenac Hotel, which you've seen pictures of and so forth, probably in there. Well, I wanted him to look up to the crowd and up to the people leaning out of the window. But I also had put on the facade of the building the big gold letters of the word hotel, so the audience would know where they were going, into a hotel. And he said, I don't think I would look up. I said, well, you better look up or else.
What about somebody like Orson Welles or Charles Lawton?
Well, Charlie Lawton was a problem. You know, when I made that film Jamaica Inn, it took a whole morning to get one close-up. He was a nice man, a charming man, he really was. But he suffered so much because, you know, he felt he couldn't get it out. And we were a whole morning on the one close-up until he got up and he was crying in the corner. And I went over, sort of patted him on the shoulder. He looked up at me and said, aren't you and I a couple of babies? And I wanted me. I mean, I wanted to use a Goldwinism and say, include me out, you know. So finally he came back and did it, you see. He said, all right. I said, yes, Charles, fine. It wasn't all that different from the other close-ups, you see. And then he took me aside and put his arm around my shoulder and said, you know how I got it, don't you? I said, no, Charles. How? He said, I thought of myself as a small boy of 10 wetting my knickers. Oh, really? Absolutely true, really. You'd be astonished.
Do you think there's something like a Hitchcockian actor, if that's a word, a type that is perfect for your films?
I don't really think so. There are many, many types in the film frenzy. There are all kinds of leading people from the London theatre. I used to say years ago, I don't today because he's gone, Charles is gone, but I used to say the hardest things to photograph are dogs, babies, motorboats, and Charlie Lawton. Motorboats because they never come back for take two. Everybody's gesticulating and so forth, and the boat's calmly going on out to sea somewhere.
You've used, though, a series of, I guess, what could be described as cool blondes. Grace Kelly, Tippi Hedren, Madeleine Clark.
That wasn't really by design. It was really to avoid the obvious, voluptuous, sexy blonde.
Speaking of sexiness, you deal a lot with sexual aberrations and fetishes as subject matter. You feel this is a good subject matter for suspense?
Well, suspense it doesn't relate really to that.
Then why would you use these?
Suspense relates entirely to causing an audience to go through emotions and can only be arrived at by giving them knowledge. Most people get confused between the mystery story and the thriller and the suspense story and the whodunit. See,
Well, what
the
is the
whodunit,
difference?
oh, there's a big difference. The whodunit, you see, is a intellectual exercise like a crossword puzzle. When you buy a whodunit, you're terribly tempted to look at that last page, and you don't because you feel you've wasted your money or be disappointed. But the suspense story is giving the audience full information before you start. In other words, there is a bomb under these seats. Tell the audience that, then they will scream out and say, "Get out of there, get out of there."
How about in Notorious? Could you describe the build-up of suspense there?
Well, no, that wasn't really. The suspense there was, how soon will Claude Rains find out that the woman who was the daughter of an old friend is an American agent? We all know it. We were told at the beginning that she was working with Cary Grant. Then you had the added fact that Cary Grant was in love with her. And yet in the course of his job, he literally had to put this woman into the arms of another man. So that was your emotional story, but your suspense story, which built up to its climax, when they just then, in the process of which you come to the moment when it says, "Mother, I'm married to an American agent." Now they know they've got to get rid of her, but they've got to get rid of her surreptitiously. Can't just bump her off, because all the rest of his colleagues will know. So you get a case of arsenical poisoning, you see.
Who is your idea of an ideal villain? I've heard you read somewhere that you thought that Claude Rains kind of personified
Well, he was
the
a
ideal.
nice man in his way, you know. I think any man, as you know, as you've seen the film Frenzy, you've got a cheerful, lively man who is a psychotic. You see, unless they're pleasant and acceptable, their victims would never go near them. Most people misunderstand what a villain is. He's a charming man who kills women. But if he didn't have the charm, they'd run a mile from him.
Well, that brings us back maybe to sexual aberrations again. There seem to be a lot of Jack the Ripper types in various films.
Well, they are aberrations by the fact that outwardly they're acceptable members of society. And in the picture Frenzy, I get to go to some extent in a scene between a doctor and a lawyer to explain that fact, that outwardly they're normal, apparently decent human beings. And then, quote, "it comes over them," unquote.
You do use humor. Do you think that plays a kind of relief from the building up of suspense?
You'll always need it.
You know, you can't
It's like
just
a bomb situation. If you have the bomb, you must never let it go off, because if you've created suspense with the audience, then you must relieve it.
For instance, I think in the 39 Steps, when Madeleine Carroll is in the train compartment and she gives the hero away after you feel she's not going to.
Oh, well, that's true. Wouldn't you if a man burst into the apartment? In the movies, of course, she'd return the embrace, you see. But then I don't believe what they do in movies is always correct. I'm a believer in humor. I mean, who wants to fill a film always with, heavy going? It's like The Poor Housewife, you know. And those pictures that are heavy-handed, I call them sink-to-sink pictures. Because here's the poor housewife washing dishes at the sink. The husband returns from work, looks at this slightly forlorn figure and says, "Look, dear, why don't you dry your hands, go up and put on a nice, clean dress. Yeah, we'll get a sitter and we'll go out and have dinner and take in a movie." She said, that'll be wonderful. Takes her apron off, goes upstairs, they get the babysitter, they go out, they have dinner, he parks the car, they go in the movie, and she sits and looks at the screen, and what does she see? A woman washing dishes at the sink. Yet they make those movies, you know? I mean, the sink symbolizes the kind of heavy-handed movie that's made. Sometimes I made them myself under certain circumstances, but who wants to?
What about in North by Northwest? That also
Well, that's a
was
fantasy, you know.
And what about the humor that's in North by Northwest? Can you describe a little bit the various things that you use
Well,
there?
I mean, there's the humor of Cary Grant being made drunk and goes on a wild ride in a car, you know. And there's a certain amount of wit on the part of he and the girl, so forth.
Let's get back to suspense again. Can you describe a little bit the build-up of suspense in Spellbound?
Well, in Spellbound, you start, of course, with a mysterious figure. Spellbound was based on a novel which we didn't use. It was called The House of Dr. Edwards. And it was the story of a doctor taking a patient to a mental institution. Although I never used it in the film, I wanted one of the men in the dining car of the train, and he saw a fly crawling across, to take the fly and put the wings off. And the other man said, oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you. You know, and the point was I didn't know which was the crazy man who pulled the wings off, the doctor or the patient. And we abandoned that idea, and I worked with Ben Hecht on it, and we started the story of the new doctor who came into the institution and fell in love with a female doctor, and gradually he began to have sort of weird reactions to lines, whether they were made by a fork on a tablecloth or the lines on the robe of the woman he'd fallen in love with. But gradually, of course, it in a way was a mystery, but it was a mystery with certain overtones of psychiatry in it, you see. And it was almost like examining a patient under psychiatric terms, that the mystery was solved. It was really a mystery story, but of course